This message comes from Charles Schwab. When it comes to managing your wealth, Schwab gives you more choices, like full-service wealth management and advice when you need it. You can also invest on your own and trade on Thinkorswim. Visit schwab.com to learn more.
This is America in Pursuit, a limited series from NPR and Throughline. I'm Ramtin Arablouei. Each week, we bring you stories about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in America that began 250 years ago this year. As we count down to July 4th, I've been thinking a lot about the fact that when the founders signed the Declaration of Independence, they were literally starting a new country from scratch. And it was a country based on ideas that had to somehow be shared widely.
The first U.S. government was really an information and communications network.
This is Winifred Gallagher.
I am a journalist. My book is called How the Post Office Created America.
And like her book title implies, Winifred believes the Postal Service provided the technological infrastructure the American Revolution needed in order to succeed and then run a new democratic republic. We know that revolutions are often fueled by new technologies. Take the role Twitter played in organizing and connecting uprisings that took place a little over a decade ago in Tunisia, Egypt, and Syria during the so-called Arab Spring. The American Revolution might have taken place centuries ago, and the post office might not seem anything like social media. But consider that back then, the post office gave people in the American colonies a new way of sharing information more easily across more places than they could ever before. And it would become a lifeline connecting people, quietly at first, to ideas that would change the world. So today, me and Run bring you the story of how the U.S. Postal Service fueled a revolution and gave rise to the United States of America. That's coming up after a quick break.
This message comes from LinkedIn, who knows how even one hiring nightmare can ruin your small business dreams. That's why LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant uses insights from over 1 billion professionals to create a personalized shortlist of the best applicants, and even finds candidates you would have otherwise missed, so you can hire right the first time. Start hiring with LinkedIn and post your job for free today at linkedin.com/NPR. This message comes from Grainger. Grainger knows that if you're the purchasing manager at a manufacturing plant, the only thing more important than having the right safety gear is having it there when you need it. That's why you can count on Grainger for auto reordering, helping ensure your team members always have cut-resistant gloves on hand, and each shift can run safely and efficiently. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Winifred Gallagher started thinking about the role of the post office because
For 15 years, I more or less commuted between New York City and a little cowboy town in Wyoming.
She spoke to us from that little cowboy town, Du Bois, Wyoming. And she said that taking that trip so often gave her
A lot of time to think about what linked one half of the country to the other half of the country, and it was the post office.
Just a heads up. We talked to Winifred in the summer of 2020 at the start of the pandemic. So the audio quality may not be what you're used to hearing on this show.
Can you describe how the founders thought about the postal system and why it was such an important part of the nation from the beginning in terms of being able to connect different parts of the colonies that then became a country, a nation?
Well, the post office was really woven into America's DNA by Benjamin Franklin. He was, of course, a founding father, but also our first postmaster general. His earlier experience of running the primitive mail system that linked the Great Britain's 13 colonies gave him the managerial skills, but much more important, it also convinced him that these 13 very quarrelsome little fiefdoms would be far more powerful together than apart. The Patriots' first concerted acts included the creation of underground communications networks that enabled them to conspire under the British radar. The first was called the Committees of Correspondence, and then the Constitutional Post. These informal networks were the thing that linked Thomas Jefferson and Sam Adams and the other revolutionaries, enabled them to talk treason But they were also not just the incubators of the new post office department, as it would be called, which was established in 1775, but of the United States government itself. You could argue that the first U.S. government was really an information and communications network.
Wow. So it makes sense that it was super important to the founders, right? It was partly the reason why the country was able to be created, it sounds like. I mean, information,
That's right.
Communication.
That's right. It was the nervous system of the republic, the early republic. And the same people who ran these communications networks ended up running the government. Things changed a lot in 1792 because Benjamin Rush and James Madison, I mean, these guys were political philosophers. They weren't just like some guys. They were very impressive intellectuals in their own rights. They realized that a democracy, if it's going to work, it requires knowledgeable voters. So they decided that they would use their new postal network to create an informed electorate. And this is really crucial. They devised this kind of Robin Hood scheme that used the very costly postage for letter mail. Then most people didn't even get one letter a year. They were mostly sent by businessmen and lawyers. So they soaked these businessmen on their letter mail, and that money subsidized mailing cheap, uncensored newspapers to every citizen. This was considered wildly radical in Europe. In Europe, the governing powers didn't want the people to know what was going on. So this really very enlightened postal policy is the thing that really sparked America's very lively, disputatious political culture, which we see every day, and also made us the global communications and information superpower of the world with amazing speed.
So basically, given the speed of the information was being shared, how did this sort of change the trajectory of the country in those early years?
Well, the Post mandate to deliver the news throughout a very rapidly expanding country, it was already moving west over the Appalachians, that very quickly organized the country's physical and social landscape around post offices that were connected by post roads. In order to get the newspapers to the people, the department had to jumpstart a transportation industry. There was no way to get from point A to point B until the post office started paying initially horseback riders and stagecoaches to deliver the mail as quickly as possible. So by the time de Tocqueville came to America in 1831, the system already had, our mail system already had twice as many post offices as Great Britain and 5 times more than his own France. He was astonished at how quickly it developed. Of course, most newspapers then had no way to distribute themselves widely other than the mail. I mean, if you had a newspaper, you could sell whatever you could sell on the street corner, but you wanted to have like a more wide distribution, you depended on the post office. Part of the mandate to create an informed electorate also led the Post to have very low prices for mailing books and magazines, which still exist today. If you're mailing somebody a book, always write book rate on the front. You pay like less than half. And in a country, a lot of which was agrarian for, well into the 20th century, this business of sending magazines and books very cheap throughout the country really amounted to what was for a lot of people an informal educational system, sort of like a secondary educational system, where people really learned about they got the National Geographic and they got, Ladies' Home Journal to learn about health. And this was really the way people kept themselves informed and educated.
Winifred, you spent a lot of time, obviously, thinking about writing about the post office and, on those like long rides to Wyoming, you were thinking about it. I guess I'm wondering, for someone listening today in the present context, why do you think this story matters to Americans today? And what would you want them to take away from understanding the role it had in creating the country?
I think just that. The post office did arguably create the country and create our political culture. There are good days and bad days, but we do have this extraordinary freedom of information and communications that's kind of made us who we are. It's hard to overstate the value of a delivery system that can reach every house with potentially urgently needed materials. So I think it is an excellent time for people to think about the value of this system.
That's it for this week's episode of America in Pursuit, a limited series from NPR and Throughline. If you want to hear more about the role of the U.S. Postal Service in the years after the American Revolution, check out the full-length Throughline episode called, you guessed it, The Postal Service. And make sure to join us next week when the American revolutionaries start building the U.S. government from the ground up. The executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judiciary.
The Supreme Court is going to be situated in the basement of the Capitol, and that gives you a sense, actually, of the hierarchy of what people at the time thought about the Supreme Court.
How the Supreme Court went from the least powerful branch of government to the powerful arbiter it is today. Don't miss it. This episode was produced by Kiana Moradam and edited by Christina Kim, with help from the Throughline production team. Music, as always, by me, Ramtin Arablouei, and my band Drop Electric. Special thanks to Julie Kane, Irene Noguchi, Beth Donovan, Casey Miner, and Lindsay McKenna. We're your hosts, Ramtin Arablouei
and Rand Abdel Fattah. Thanks for listening.
This message comes from Prolon. Feeling heavy and depleted after the holidays? Prolon's 5-day fasting mimicking diet aims to make it easy to reset your body, habits, and energy heading into the new year. Developed at USC's Longevity Institute, the goal of Prolon's nutrition program is to rejuvenate you from within by working at the cellular level to support fat loss, glowing skin, and sharper focus. Get 15% off plus a bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/NPR. Support for NPR and the following message come from Spectrum Business, providing connectivity solutions to help your business stay online and on track, delivering fast, reliable internet, phone, TV, and mobile solutions, all backed by 100% U.S.-based support. They offer scalable plans and straightforward pricing. Spectrum Business, reliable connections, responsive support, and tailored solutions that power your success. Learn more at spectrum.com/business. Restrictions apply. Services not available in all areas.